Hi there, welcome to the first episode of Don't Panic Geocacher, a channel devoted to solving mystery caches in the hobby geocaching. My name is Arjen and I go in the game by Waterfin 5 and I will help you get more understanding of what mystery caches are, what puzzle caches are, and how you can get better at solving those. Every episode I'll take a different topic about mystery caches and give you a little bit more insight. And they're kind of structured the same. I will start with more theoretical, show you some slides, show you some ideas about what the topic is of that day. And at the end, I will solve some actual puzzles, either created by myself or created by somebody that's given me permission to share share the solution. So this today's episode is about Mystery Caches 101, absolutely pure beginning. And if you're more experienced geocacher, you may already know the solution. But if you're new to mystery caches, this gives you a good basis. And even if you are already experienced, you may still learn something new. A lot of information to share, and at least share some solutions as well and some techniques in this episode that will help you get started with mystery caches. With that, let's get started. So what is a mystery cache? Well, a mystery cache is a special cache type, often denoted by the question mark, right? That is the symbol that Groundspeak uses for their website for mystery caches, special cache type. And that means that you can't just go there and sign the logbook. Might be two things going on. Either you have to do something special, you may have had to do something special in the past, or the coordinates are actually not where the cache is hidden. The cache may not be hidden at the posted coordinates. These are all variations of what mystery caches can be. So mystery caches require you to do something extra before you go there to make sure you're prepared, that you can do what needs to be done, or that you go to the right location. Typically, if the physical location, the actual cache with the log that you need to sign, is not at the posted coordinates that are listed, it means it will be in a 2-mile radius. This started around 2006. Before that, it could even be a longer distance, and I've seen as far as 20, 30, 40 miles or as many kilometers away from the posted coordinates. But all the ones that have been posted roughly after 2010, 2011, that's when the rules started to become truly enforced, will all be within that 2-mile radius. So that is something to take into account. Just don't drive blindly to a mystery cache and hope to find a container there. You may be out of luck. So there's many type of mystery caches, and fortunately there's some attributes that will help you what type of mystery cache you are dealing with. So the attributes, of course, are shown on the cache page and look something like this. They're optional to use, they're not always strictly enforced, and certainly with all the caches they may not always be there, but they may often help you in figuring out what it needs to be done. So let's go over some of these attributes and what it means for a mystery cache. So here is 7 different types of mystery cache that I identified. The first one has a special attribute, little puzzle piece. That means it's a field puzzle. That means that the posted coordinates are where at least one of the stages of the cache is. Might be multiple stages. Just like multi-caches that can have multiple stages, mystery caches can also have multiple stages. Often they may only have one, but sometimes they have more. But the posted coordinates are for a field puzzle is where at least one of the stages are. And that means that you can go to the site and may have to do something, and the cache page will often describe what you need to do. Might be something physical that you need to do and open a special type of lock. It might be that you have to answer questions about something that you find on the site. The second one is a very special one. You see, very unique attribute. It's the beacon type caches. This is based on a specific technology called Chirp. And Chirp is a technology that's supported by some GPS devices. And some phones also have the capabilities, and you may have to install a special app to unlock that capability on your phone. What does a Chirp device do? Well, if you're close enough, it will send you information. You can find it, and it will send information to your phone that you can then use to maybe find the cache, right? So it's a pretty rare type. It's not very common, but be aware if you see that icon that you be prepared to have chirp capable device, either a GPS or a phone that can do it. The next type is a so-called night cache. Often it also may have a flashlight indicated. This means that it's a cache that can only be at night. And so there might be different reasons for that with a mystery cache, but often it has to do that it is something with reflectors or something that's reflecting that is only visible at night. Hence the flashlight. Shine the flashlight on the reflector, and now you will see where you need to go. Often it may lead to a certain trail that you have to follow that will then bring you to the final cache. Lots of fun, especially with a family, so a great type of cache, and they're typically classified as mystery caches. Challenge caches are a whole other type, and challenges are a very different set of the game, and it means for a mystery cache that you have to meet certain criteria. You have to have found a certain set of other caches. Now, what set of other caches is described on the cache page? It might be as simple as you have to have found 10 caches, or it might be as difficult as to find 1,000 caches of a day. Often the very complicated descriptions that may be imposed before you can log the cache as found. You can go ahead and go there, but you can't log it and say that you found it unless you meet the criteria as well. And challenge caches have their own little attribute recently introduced in the last few years for these specific type of caches. So again, you may find other caches that just say challenge but don't have the attribute yet, because as I just mentioned, the use of attributes has only been enforced and also have some regional differences on how they're being used. So pay good attention, don't rely just on the attributes, but attributes can help you. Then the next two are more bonus type caches. Bonus cache is something that's often in additional to a series. Let's say there's maybe 10 caches in a row on a certain trail, and then the cache owner hit a specific extra cache that you can only do if you have done the other ones in the series. This is often accomplished by leaving information in the other caches that you need to then get the final locations. Might be numbers, might be letters, might be anything that you need, and that information is now on this bonus cache page. And now with that information, you can now solve the final problems. And again, there's a new attribute for that, which is the bonus cache attribute. The same attribute can also be used for bonus for adventure labs. Adventure labs also are a relatively new addition to geocaching, which is a virtual game where you can go to locations, answer questions. And a lot of adventure lab have a so-called geocache associated, which is a bonus cache where you only get the coordinates if you complete the adventure lab. Once you've completed the adventure lab, you have enough information to solve the coordinates of the cache, and now you can do the bonus geocache. And then finally, the so-called puzzle cache. And a lot of the episodes on this channel will be about puzzle caches and how to solve puzzle caches. I may do some episodes about some of the other ones if there are specific requests, but I will for now focus on puzzle caches. Puzzle caches means that the coordinates, the posted coordinates, won't help you. And so that's why I kind of like took the opposite symbol, again not mandatory, but kind of saying it's not a field puzzle. Something that has to be solved from home. And that means that the posted coordinates might be useful, but you don't necessarily need to go there. Something that you need to do. Now let's take a look at that. What is that something that you need to do, right? Well, that could be anything. It could be questions that you need to be answered. Maybe you have to Google information, answer questions, and that information will lead you to the answer. It might be traditional puzzles like crosswords or Sudoku or Anagrams or anything that can be on a printed piece of paper you may find in puzzle books or some non-geocaching related website. You need to solve those, and with solving them, there's a specific instructions how the solve can now help you to get coordinates. It might be riddles or brain teasers. These are some of my favorites, where you see something, you have to interpret what it is and how to make coordinates out of it. Might be math, very simple as add these numbers to the coordinates, or it could be very complicated, higher university level math. All of it exists. Could be translations in either real languages or virtual languages. And a special type is the whole ciphers and codes. Ciphers and codes, and I will do many episodes about ciphers and codes, is a specific way to encode coordinates. Ciphers have been used all over time, and it's to encrypt certain piece of information. Encrypt text, encrypt numbers. Well, with puzzle caches, it's all about encryption. It's all about encoding, and so ciphers and codes are very useful. And I will go over some of the commonly used ciphers in future episodes. It could be related to pictures, that the pictures will help you get the coordinates or the final cache location. There's many ways to hide information with pictures, and so also that I will talk about in future episodes, some examples of that. And it could be that you have to find patterns. Certain words are being used that give you information. Certain pictures are being shown that give you certain information. And you have to find the pattern. What do they have in common that will help you find cache coordinates? And then finally, there's many ways to hide information on the cache page. These are so-called caches that may leave an almost blank page. You don't see a puzzle, but the puzzle is still there somewhere. And I will give you an example of those in this episode. I'll talk about it as well. It's quite common for geocaches to have that information. And there's lots of them out there where there is no other puzzle other than the cache page itself. Really, if you think about it, there's very few limitations of what a puzzle can be. You've gave all the examples, but there is many more, and often you may have to use tools, specific websites that have specific techniques and tools for you, or information. You may have to download other software. The sky is really the limit. From a Groundspeak perspective, they didn't put many rules on mysteries, allowing the cache owner lots of flexibility and also creating lots of complication of how do I solve this? And that's why this channel is here, to help you get over that level of panic and become you more familiar with mystery caches and getting more comfortable with how to solve. So caches can range from 1 to 5 difficulty. That is just a general difficulty of a geocache. With mystery caches, that often is more than just a hide. Normally, for a traditional cache, the 1 to 5 difficulty would be the hide. For mystery caches, this is often the difficulty for the puzzle. The cache page will often say something like, this is a difficulty 4, but the hide is more a difficulty 1. So that is something to take into account when you solve a puzzle, and I will talk more about it in the future. So if you starter and are just a beginner, I would focus on difficulty 1 and 2 puzzles in your area. Even if you don't think you go there anytime soon, for practice purposes, it might be good to take some of the simple puzzles that are lowly rated and solve those first before going for the level 4 and 5, because they can be very difficult and in some cases almost impossible to solve without the cache owner telling you how to solve it. And that certainly happens. So don't feel discouraged if you see a 4 or 5 and you say, I don't know what to do. You're not alone. Many people wouldn't know what to do when they see it, and only through practice you may get some familiar, and some can never be solved. That's just the way of the game. So one of the things that can help you is a so-called Geochecker. And I will show some examples of that, but a Geochecker is kind of like an answer verifier. So it's an optional component on the page. Groundspeak has their own Geochecker, but there is many other websites that can function as a Geochecker. If you don't see one, make sure that it is not a field puzzle or one of the other cache types that I talked about. But if you do see one, I highly recommend using it, because even with a simple cache, it is very important that for you to verify your information. Have I solved it correct? You don't want to go to the wrong location and struggle to find it only because you made a mistake on solving the puzzle. Also, the GeoChecker often contains additional hints about the hide, for example. They may give a picture of how it's hidden or how it's there, especially if the puzzle was the main component of the cache. There's different types of geocheckers out there, so also verify what a geochecker is. There's geocheckers that need exact coordinates. There's geocheckers that need approximation of coordinates, so you have to be within a certain radius, a certain range. Or there's specific ones that don't even need a coordinate, but they just need a keyword, and then they will give you the coordinates. So always check what type of checker it is and see what answer is needed, because it may change your entire approach. Now again, there is a special attribute to say if there's a geochecker. Some caches I know only want to solve puzzles if there is a geochecker, and if there's no geochecker, they don't want to solve it. Note again, the attribute is optional, and certainly with older caches you often don't see them, but with newer ones you may see them often when a Geochecker is available. So something to look out for. And then some solving tips, right? In this episode, I will only go into the beginning and will just show you some of the puzzles and how they're solved. In future episodes, I will give more techniques and more information and hopefully help you become more comfortable solving these mystery caches. But here are 4 direct tips. First of all, read and look carefully. The cache owner describes the puzzle, and in that information, they tell you what they expect you to do. Hopefully. If not, there might still be hints in there. So little details may be important. So I can't stress enough, read every letter of the cache page, look at every picture, look at everything, especially if you don't immediately see what to do. Read and reread, and it will help you more understand. Also try everything. As I mentioned, there's really no limit to what a mystery cache can be. So it's also important to just take a look and think like, well, maybe I should try this. Maybe I try that. This will help you get more familiar with how puzzles work. Because at the end, just like most skills in life, it takes practice. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And these series of episodes are just to help you get started. But at the end, doing it is very, very valuable. And then finally, a more technical note. Every page has kind of like the HTML code behind it. HTML is the language that the internet is based on for websites. And Groundspeak, a geocaching website, uses of course HTML to get you the information, but that can have hidden information in there. And I'm going to show you how you can see that information and how it can help you solve puzzles. Just one of the tricks to help you get further with mystery caches. Will it help with every puzzle? No. Will it help you with some of them? Absolutely. So with that, we've gone over the educational part. And now just let's take a look at some actual puzzles out there. And I will show you how they get solved and refer back to some of the things I told you in this episode. Add some actual geocaches and how to solve. So this is an older cache, by now archived, that I adopted. And it's an actual mystery cache. So this mystery cache has a little bit of text in it. So just cache is not in the above coordinates. You notice the attribute is not in there. This is an older cache, so it doesn't necessarily have the attribute, but it has a geochecker. In this case, it's an external geochecker called geochecker.org, one of the websites. And this has the information of how to verify the cache coordinates. And if we look through the text, we'll find here the actual puzzle, right? So there is something here in a way, of course, that we can recognize that this is the puzzle. There's, first of all, not very readable, but second of all, we see something that is N and W, right? Something we recognize. This is where close N and W is to where the cache is hidden. And now we have to find the alternative. You also see here that the zeros at the end, often an indication of what we need to do, that it is a mystery cache. But of course, the icon already told us that as well. So what do we need to do, right? How do we solve this one? Well, there's all kinds of ways of how advanced we are to kind of recognize what this is. One of them is, if you see text, is to see, well, do I see like common letters that I expect, right? Do I expect a lot of E's and N's and I's and O's? Because that means that in the English language, at least, those are the most commonly used letters. So, and I do see those quite a bit. And here I see 3 words that almost look identical, right? So that's kind of suspicious. And so that makes me think that I'm dealing here with kind of like an anagram. It's kind of spelled different, but it might be the same word. So let's use an anagram solver and see if we can help figure out what some of these anagrams are. So this is one of my favorite ones that I often use. It's called Andy's Anagram Solver. And I'll keep that one open to help me solve the actual cache. So back and forth. There we go. Now that allows me to basically open up and do the anagrams. So let's take a look at the first one, first word. And use that for the cache. Type it in. No, that's not what I wanted. This is the word I wanted. Go. And let's see what it was. Well, we have a number of options. Alerting, integral, relating, rectangular, triangle. Probably alerting and triangle are the most common ones. So let's take the next one. So do another one. And take this one. Line. I had triangle, now I have line. That already looks like it might go something. So let's take the next one. Diamond. Okay, I get several shapes, right? So I get diamond, triangle, line. That all looks pretty good. Now let's take a look at the cache coordinate again. Get a cache coordinate, we need in this case 14 or 15 numbers. Now leading zeros are often not used. So in this case, I'm looking for 14 and or 15 numbers, ideally. Not mandatory, but ideally. Well, here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and an n at the beginning. That matches this one, right? N, and then I have 7 numbers. The degree symbol and the dot are often just kind of like a given. You insert those at the right place. So this indeed looks like every word is going to give me another coordinate. Well, I now know it's anagrams, so I can kind of solve them just by looking at them. We had line, void. Would that be a 0? Well, in cache coordinates, zeros can be very important. And we see here that the third digit kind of like needs to be a 0. Keep it within that 2-mile radius, right? This number can't fluctuate too much, otherwise I'm too far away. I will explain some more in a future episode. And indeed, I see the third episode being void, making me think that indeed the 0 void is meaning 0. So now I have triangle. This is the diamond, same word as that one, right? It looks like the same build-up. So triangle, diamond. Well, diamond, like a baseball diamond, has like 4 corners. Triangle has 3 corners. And I'm looking for a 3 and a 4. So now I have 3, 4, 0. Line kind of has 2 ends. And so line, 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 2, 2, 2. And then the void giving me another 0. This word, I don't know what it means. So let's figure out what this could be. Kind of expecting it to be an 8, right? Because I have 7 numbers here, 7 words here. And so taking a look. And indeed octagon, octagon something with 8. And so the same. And this way I can just solve every little piece. And at the end, if I do it correctly, now I often use Notepad just to keep some quick notes. So we had an N, we had a triangle, we had a diamond, we had a 0, we had a 2, and then we had 2, 2, 0. And then we had a west, we had an 8, we have the diamond again. Next one looks like a triangle again. Then this one, I don't know. I can use my anagram solver again, right? See what that word is. Because, well, using tools, and as I mentioned, using other websites, that's pretty much what you do, right? When you have to solve the puzzle. Nonogram. That's something with 9. I kind of, from my math history, kind of remember that's 9. So now we have 9, 0, 2, point. Point, I guess, is 1. So going with 3, what did I say here? 3, 9, 0, 2, 1. Well, I assume this is the correct coordinates, right? Well, that's why we have a Geochecker, because this will help us figure it out. So Groundspeak tells me that leaving their website. And this is one of the Geocheckers I just mentioned. Post in the coordinates. Type in that I'm not a robot. Well, almost was a robot. And there we go. And it says congratulations. And you see there's a small hint here where the cache is located. So we can now copy these coordinates. And we can go back to our puzzle as it's here. And now say, okay, let's update the original coordinates. And now specify the new coordinates. And we have successfully solved our first puzzle. Now, this was an archived one, so it won't help anybody much. But it kind of gives you an idea. This was indeed a 2-star, relatively straightforward information of how to solve it with a similar Anagram. So let's take a look at another one. So slightly more difficult one. See 2.5 stars. Well, don't bother the review. Okay, I promise I won't. And here is one of those puzzles. We see indeed the not not a field puzzle, so we know it's something we have to do at home. Don't go to the posted coordinates. Just in case there's some text here, tells you the same. And also the Geochecker enabled, so we see here there's a Geochecker available. But I don't see a puzzle. Sometimes it helps by selecting the page. It might reveal some white text, maybe it's white or text on white background, but we don't see anything here. Now there's many ways to hide information on a cache page. White text is one of them, but often it will just help to actually look at the HTML code of the page. So depending on the browser, depending on your system that you use, it's slightly different. I'm using Chrome. So in my case, I can just right click and say view page source. Other browsers may say a slightly different description, but it's all the same information. And that will now open up a new tab, and with a lot of, well, if you're not familiar with it, information that doesn't look very helpful. What you need to look for in this case is so-called the area where the description of the cache is. You can do that by finding. I'm using Control F to do a find. And now I type in long des, which is basically part of a long description. And you see it will jump immediately to where the long description is. And we see here that same text that we saw on the cache page itself. So we are in the right area. This is consistent for every cache that you go to. This is where it's located, and we see the HTML around it. Now you don't need to know much about HTML. This is not an HTML course, but you need to kind of recognize what is different here. And we can immediately see here, like we see some special text that I didn't see before. I saw only told the reviewer, but don't bother the reviewer. I did see that part, but this part wasn't visible. This is a so-called HTML comment. It's with a special annotation, they can hide information that's only visible in the HTML. Going back to the page, as I mentioned, nothing to see here, or very minimal to see here. But if we go to the HTML source again, we actually see this as a line. And in this case, it says, is there a hint here? This was placed there by the cache owner, in this case me, to kind of indicate that, yes, you're on the right track. Well, that's interesting. Well, I already mentioned, look carefully, right? So I said, check the HTML, we're doing that. And also look at everything and look carefully. Do we see something else that looks off? We only have to look in this section between where basically the span begins and the span ends, or this div begins and div ends. That's really the part that we have to look at. The rest we can ignore. All these other thousands of lines are to put everything else, but for now we're just focusing on this little part which falls between span and this span. Okay. Well, same text. There's some letters around it that I don't understand. And in this case are not important. There is something very peculiar about this. Not sure if you've seen it yet, but the reviewer here has actually an underscore underneath it, between it. When we looked at the page, everything was underlined, so the underscore is kind of hidden. If you look closely, you might be able to see it, but it may just look as a smudge on the monitor. But if you look at the source code and the HTML code, it's very clearly visible. The reviewer. It can't be a coincidence, right? That must have been put there on purpose. So we look at the HTML code, found this little thing that's off. Let's now focus on that. The reviewer. What has reviewers? Well, the whole cache was called Don't Bother the Reviewer, because if you post a geocache to the community, you have to get it reviewed by somebody. There is reviewers out there, and they publish the cache coordinates. Sorry, they publish the cache, not the coordinates if it's a puzzle. They publish the cache, and they verify whether it meets the standards, right? Groundspeak. And so doing that here, only told the reviewer, maybe we should look up the reason. So the way to do that, the way to look up another user, the way that I go there is go to your profile and there is says find another player. And now we find that weird information, right? The underscore reviewer. Let's go look it up. Oh, that is an actual person. And in this case, you see an account, 30 finds, and it has some coordinates right here. Could it be? Well, let's take those coordinates, copy them across, go back to our page. And now we use our Geochecker. Put the coordinates in here. I'm not a robot. Yeah, passed. And now check the solution. Now, here you see what happened. The was correct, so we get this green. And that's often what people will call it. If they solved it, they say, oh, I got green. It means that the Geochecker told them that it was okay. The Groundspeak one will automatically update. So in the other one, I had to manually do it. This one will automatically do it. And so I don't have to manually copy and paste the words. We just solved our second cache. The cache where some of the puzzle was actually hidden and you had to make some jumps to figure out that this information, and you see as I highlighted it, it kind of shows that there is an underscore there. It shows there's something special there that doesn't show for the other spaces. So that would have been another way to detect it. So another puzzle, slightly more tricky, but certainly not the one-of-a-kind puzzle. There's more out there where you kind of have to look at other cache pages, have to look at something else, and looking at the source code, HTML code, will help a lot. And again, look for small details. Often it's very minor of how cache's information is there. Solve it. Okay, I'll do one more, and then I will go back to the original educational part, which is another puzzle posted by me. And this is part of a series. This is actually a series of 9 caches. They kind of work together into a grand finale cache to solve them all. And so the beginning of the part kind of explains, it's not supposed to coordinates, we already knew that, and that is part of a series, and that this puzzle can be solved individually. You don't need anything else other than this page. The final one, which is listed here at the bottom, you have to kind of use all the answers you got before from all these other caches. So it's kind of like 8 caches work together, and then the 9th one is the final solution. And fortunately, it's very clearly marked here, the puzzle. Well, here we see the puzzle. There's a little text here that says, who wrote this? Is this even English? The whole idea is that you're solving a heist. The heist has many different components to it, and nodes that have been found related to the heist, and you are charged with solving the heist. And through these puzzles, you can get information, you will find some geocaches, and at the end, you will have solved the mystery of who did it, what did they use, what did they steal, etc. Okay, so that's the overall. We don't need to know that to solve all this puzzle, we just need to look at this information. So what do we see? One picture, apparently as the puzzle, and some words on it that, well, like I said, is this even English? Still, act on, waking, ways, sing. Looks a little bit weird, right? Looks like there's some extra space in here. This almost looks like there is the first letter is missing. Then we have these 2 weird pictures, that a note and some arrow to the left. Well, for cache coordinates, we already know we need like 15 or 14 letters, depending on where you are, and could even be a different number, be less. So in this case, I'm looking for 14 or 15, since there's only one leading 0. Okay, let's go down. Oh, this is another geochecker. This one is called Certitude. This one will check your puzzle solution. So again, let's take a look. Tells me that I'm leaving the Groundspeak page, and so now I'm at the Certitude page. And here, Certitude is kind of unique in a way that it has an option to show coordinates and test your coordinates in multiple ways. And in this case, it says keyword required. So Certitude has the option for a verification of coordinates, but it also has an option to just do a keyword requirement. So in this case, the puzzle is not a coordinate but is actually a uh, keyword. That changes our approach to the puzzle completely. We need a certain keyword. Now, often it could be one or multiple words. There may be spaces in there, but often the spaces are omitted. Typically, it's one big string that you. And the cache page and the information may give you some more information. Let's try to solve this puzzle. Okay, let's first look at the difficulty. It's a 2. So important is to not make it more complicated than it is. If it's a 2 difficulty, it's something that should be relatively straightforward. But we know here it's just a actual puzzle. We need a keyword at the end, maybe one or multiple words. Maybe the line indicates we need 2 words. Don't know. Need 4 words, one for each line, like this, right? We don't know yet. So I see something here, and I see that space in the middle, right? Could be anagrams again, that I have to mix the letters, but the space looks kind of deliberate. So maybe it is that I have to fill in the missing letters. So I'm going to use another tool here, a Crossword Solver, and let's take a look at that one. And let's see if we can help it solve the questions. So let's go to the first one. So 5 plus a missing letter. Maybe it's multiple letters, don't know, but let's first start with just one. Kind of a letter we're missing. Then like this. Let's say search for the answer. Stable, staple. Okay. Notepad again. So first one is either a B or an L. Let's take a look at the next option. Acton. ACTON. Okay. Acton, action. Okay, it's only one option. Nice. So an I. Well, the next one it's more like walking. So might be walking. I don't know. So let's just say this will be an L. And the last one, ways, always, L. So here, this looks like the word bill or the word lil. I have this picture here. It's a note. Maybe it's a bill. Maybe. Not a great bill, but could be. Let's take a look at the other side. So it sounds like it has a lot of options. So in this case, one letter less. So we're looking for 5 letters. S space I N G, right? Sling, sting, sewing, swing. So lots of combinations. So sting, sling, sew, and swing. Okay. Next one, rally. Probably really. So I'm gonna go with it. That's an E. But it might be good to still use the thing, right? Because you don't want to forget or miss one and then suddenly not be able to solve it. So often it's good to be thorough, and even if you think you know the answer, still rely on tools to help you and make sure no, only one option really is the only option. So we have an E out there. Next one, stable. Looks like, but again, going to verify it just to make sure that there is no other option possible. But no, I only get one solution. And the last one is those, maybe, multiple options. So again, I'll quickly verify 5 letters, in this case, HOSE. Search for answers. Oh, there's actually 3 options. It's a good thing I checked, right? GTW. Well, what words can I make from that, right? This was the T that I thought initially, but it was actually 3 options. So, well, test, I see. Lest. Don't think the is going to be making a, and I don't think anything with the C or the W at the end. It doesn't seem like to make words. So we kind of have like test, lest, or west. Well, we could try it in the checker, right? We had the word bill. So it's either bill test, bill lest, or bill west, we think. As I mentioned, often spaces you can leave. Sometimes the cache page will say you have to leave spaces in, but in most cases you have. Yeah, we can go try them and see if that is correct. So let's try bill test, right? So, okay, bill test, and no, not correct. And actually it gave me a hint. It says, look at the symbols. Okay, let's take a look at the symbols. Going back to the page. What was there on the symbols? Well, we already figured out that this might potentially mean bill. So test, west. Oh, wait a minute, west. This points west, points to the left. So how about we try bill west. Ta-da! And yes, it tells me, yes, he is the mastermind. Remember his name. You kind of need that name for the other puzzle, right? I told you there's a finale where you kind of have to know all this information. This is one of the pieces of information you need to know. So we have this, and similar like we've done before, we can now paste that into the cache coordinates as we did before. This one actually has two checkers so that you can actually verify, was this the correct coordinates? And yes, this is the correct coordinates. That's the coordinates we're looking for. They're now updated on the cache page. We have solved now our third puzzle. Let's get back to the show. If you want to know more, here are some links. I'll also put those in the show notes. The first three links are other websites that will help you understand puzzle caches, kind of give a similar overview like I did in this episode, but also will give you lots of useful resources of how to solve puzzles. And so worth investigating. For those of you that like to read, there's a book about puzzle caches. It's called How to Puzzle Cache. You can go to the link that's provided here and see how you can get a hold of that book. And there is also a podcast, part of the Geocache Talk group, which specifically focus on puzzle caches. And I also recommend listening to those. Want to know more? The more you learn, the more you know. So some of the useful links. These are links that I either used in this episode, but will also use in future episodes. You see the anagram finder that I talked about, the Scrabble word finder. The top two are more generic links, specifically dedicated to tools for puzzle caches. So I highly recommend bookmarking those. They have lots of helpful solutions to some of the puzzle types that I just talked about, like ciphers, alphabets, and languages and other things. Geocaching, of course, has to do with coordinates. Coordinate converter is a great way to convert between coordinate systems. I'll talk more about it in future episodes. And then geometry is a specific one to do calculations with coordinates, and I will demonstrate it in a future episode as well. There's a French website called decode.fr. It's translated in English as well. It has lots of great tools to break ciphers, to work with ciphers, to work with alphabets and other tools. It's very rich tool-wise, so highly recommend also bookmarking that one. And then for specific math puzzles, Wolfram Alpha is a great resource for that. With that, this is the end of the show. If you like what you heard, please subscribe. Future episodes will then notify you so that you know there's a new episode for you to see and watch and learn more about puzzle caches. If you have feedback, you can comment on the website or you can contact me. I'm on WaterFan5 on the geocaching.com website, so you can send me a message there. If you want me to do a video, maybe about your mystery cache, more than happy to use your mystery cache as one of the examples in these educational videos. Or you can send me an email at geocaching.waterfan5@gmail.com. And that way, if you have any questions, suggestions, or anything else that you'd like to talk to me about, more than happy to communicate. With that, reach the end of the show. Hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully it will help you feel more comfortable. no longer have to panic when you look at mystery caches.